Okay, hello everybody. You're going to hear some more from the Hume region now. Just make sure I get this close. That was a great case study, really, really interesting. Thank you for that. So Evelyn's already talked to us about the fantastic work that Specialist Children's Services have done in Hume region in terms of implementing a new model of service delivery. I guess what I'm going to do, I can hear that's better when I get closer. What I'm going to do is go to a kind of bigger picture about what was happening in Hume region at the time, because Specialist Children's Services are one of 7 agencies providing early intervention in the region, and we okay, I'm just going to do that, how's that? And we all undertook that journey together in partnership, and what Genevieve and I are going to do is give you that sense of how we did that together as a group. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about the history of the Hume region and the reform. I won't need to do that in a lot of detail because Evelyn covered some of that earlier on. We'll talk about the regional governance structure, which is the processes that we've put in place to try to ensure that the work that we're doing in Hume has some really good governance and management and quality control around it. We'll talk about the data collection that we're doing up there, because that's really key to us being able to monitor how we're travelling and how it's important in terms of informing where we go next. We'll talk about what we think are the outcomes for families and some of the innovations that have come out of that model, and then a little bit, of course, about the challenges and where to next. So here we are, the Hume region. The map doesn't tell you very much because you can't see the detail, but you've got Melbourne down there. I won't do the pointy thing. The little yellow bit in the bottom left-hand corner, and then New South Wales up in the right. So we are a large region, geographically spread. As Evelyn said, some families living on farms. We've got families living probably an hour and a half's drive from their nearest, reasonable centre. So that in itself brings challenges, of course. And as I said before, we've got 7 agencies funded through the department to deliver services in the region. Some of them are larger statewide agencies like Noah's Ark and like Scope. Some of them are very small agencies like ours, which are just focused in one particular place within that region. So quite a range. So the review process was initiated in July 2009. The kind of stars aligned in a variety of ways, and we went underway. We undertook a review of central intake at that time in the region, and we undertook a review of the current service delivery. And out of that review process, our major reform was undertaken then from January 2010. So why did we do it in the first place? What led us to think that we needed to even do that review? A number of factors, I guess. There was a feeling that there was a lack of consistency across the region in terms of what was being offered for families, what a family's experience might be. So a family coming into an ECCESS service in Shepparton might look very different from a family coming into an ECCESS service in another part of the region, not just because of the geographical difference, but because of the actual agency that they might work with, the resources that might be enabled to them. The way that things were working was very different. There was certainly a sense that we needed to kind of pull that together. I needed to have some much more kind of flow and a much clearer idea of we're doing what we're doing because it's best practice, and we're informed that it's best practice, not because that's just how it happens to happen in Wodonga or in Seymour or wherever. The DCD literature review at that time gave us a lot of information about the kind of work that we should be moving towards and the way we should be doing things, the way we should be thinking about things, as Tim alluded to earlier on. There's systemic inefficiency, and as we know, with resources stretched as they are, we cannot afford to have systemic inefficiency in terms of getting services out to families. Families receiving services from multiple agencies and from multiple individuals within agencies, so a confusing kind of patchwork of things that families were kind of sitting in, often not sure what was available to them. Families often left with a sense of, well, I'm kind of getting this from here, but maybe I need a bit of this from here, and who's linked to who, and who do you work for again? Who are you? Scope. Oh, I thought you were, a lot of that happening. And what we were doing is not necessarily guided by evidence and evidence-based practice, but kind of a sense of this is what we do because this is where we are and how we do it. So that's why we did what we did. So from the review process, what happened? What did we actually do as a result of that? Well, first of all, we strengthened the role of central intake and early support processes within the region, and that was seen as a really key way of the beginning point, access point of families into a service system that needs to be responsive and streamlined and appropriate for a family's needs at that time. We implemented a key worker transdisciplinary approach, which is obviously the thing that we're all talking about in this session today. And we brought with that this concept of primary and secondary consultations. And I think what is key for us in Hume Region is that we offer primary and secondary consultations not just within agencies but across agencies. So because we've got small agencies who don't have a full complement of disciplines within them, say for myself, in our centre there's myself as a speech and an occupational therapist, I can actually go across to another agency locally and access a consultation from, say, a physiotherapist if I need to. So it was that building up of, we can't do this individually, we can't do this in our individual agency silos. We can only run this model if we're actually reciprocating in terms of the workforce and expertise and personnel. So we've achieved an enormous amount, and there are things, historical things that actually made that possible. We had a history of collaboration across agencies. So it wasn't like we had these 7 agencies all doing their own thing and then suddenly they all came to the party and signed an agreement. There was a strong history within the region of agencies working together under a pre-existing structure that recognised collaboration and collegiate support, and certainly Specialist Children's Services team and other large agencies have been instrumental in having that sitting there for a while. There were equal participation by all agency managers. So all agency managers are represented at a level which allows for discussion and resourcing and sharing of support, and supported most importantly by a management level within the department. So we were heavily supported by the department to do this. Okay, and I think that's crucial to understand. A lot of not necessarily financial resourcing, but certainly time and energy and support and encouragement from the department to undertake this. We had a paced implementation. I think it probably, as Evelyn alluded to, it wasn't paced that well. It was a bit quick, but we certainly had a set. We knew that this was something that was an ongoing process. We knew we weren't going to wake up in a brand new world, that there was things that needed to be done to kind of allow that to happen, and recognition that it takes people a while, and a long while sometimes, to come around to thinking of a new way of working. A leadership structure throughout which models openness and respect, incredibly important. You know, as you know, if you want families and workers to work with each other with openness and respect, then you have to lead with openness and respect. And a governance structure, I believe, which supports practitioners on the ground. So really important to remember that it's the people, you know, the practitioners on the ground that are actually doing the hard yards. Whilst it's very good for everybody else to be writing documents and policy direction and, you know, practices and procedures, it's actually the people on the ground that are rolling it out who are doing the hard work. So important that that support's in place. I'm going to hand over to Genevieve, who's going to talk to you a little bit about the governance structure that I mentioned and what that looks like. So would you like to hold the microphone, Genevieve?
That's fine.
I'll pin that on there. It's quite good holding it so she can get it closer.
Okay. All right, so picking up from where Sarah had gotten to, certainly for us a critical component of the reform has been the regional governance structure that was established under the partnership agreement. At the top of that structure is the actual partnership group, and this is a forum that's attended by managers. So it's managers of all the agencies and also managers from within DECD. And that group in the first year met on a monthly basis, and in the second year met on a bi-monthly basis, and will continue into the next year on a bi-monthly basis. The next component is the sub-regional practitioner forums, and these are forums that are attended by all the practitioners from all the service providers in each sub-region. So there's 4 sub-regions within the Hume region, and each of those will have a practitioners forum on at least a quarterly basis. And the chairs from those forums provide a quarterly report back to the partnership group. And finally, the allocation panel, which is attended by team leaders and supervisors. So this becomes a forum for not only the allocation of clients, but also for service delivery discussions. And again, the chair of that panel provides a report back to each partnership group meeting. So the strong lines of communication between the managers and the partnership group and the practitioners at the sub-regional practitioner forums has enabled practitioners to raise issues and questions. So whilst they can raise things through their own agency, they also have an immediate connection through to the partnership group and can raise things that way. The partnership group's able to inform practitioners of issues, and often this is responding to concerns that have come up from the practitioners forum, but also things that might be arising that it's important for the practitioners to receive information about. And professional development needs being able to be fed up and down between the two forums. The ongoing communication of issues between the managers of the partnership group and the team leaders and supervisors of the allocation panel has also enabled team leaders and supervisors to raise issues that impact on practice. So there's that direct link from those who are supervising up to the managers around what the key issues are that are arising at the time. And the partnership group's decisions are able to be informed by the experience of those directly engaged in providing the service. One of the key outcomes is that the partnership structure has promoted a sense of connection and allegiance across agencies between practitioners, team leaders and managers. Importantly, this has contributed to a positive engagement of the practitioners who have felt involved in the reforms, supported in changes of practice and an allegiance to the new model. And in including this, we had conversations about not wanting to create an overly rosy picture. You know, people at different times were anxious about the new model and challenged by the new model. We're not saying that everybody sort of felt perfectly about it, but the open lines of communication definitely allowed people to kind of be part of that process and to feel a commitment to it, and certainly have been very positive about it. As Sarah indicated earlier, part of the new model was also to strengthen, was a strengthening of the central intake and early support processes, and there were a number of things that were part of that, and one was the introduction of home visits for all families. So apart from some very specific circumstances, all families get a home visit. There's been, through that process, a greater attention to eligibility and a greater capacity to be responsible, to provide responsive early support, having had a greater connection with families and seen them operating in their own environment, and to provide an initial family service and support plan that addresses all those issues. Again, we kind of included this not because we sort of see these as new or unique functions of central intake and early support, but really to highlight that at a time when a lot of regions, because of the demands, were starting to look at stopping to provide home visits and eliminating early support, the partnership group made a commitment to actually increasing resources so that this front end could actually be strengthened. And again, we feel like that's had a positive impact on the process. Sorry, I'm conscious of time. The third point then that I just want to talk about is around data, which has been another significant area of collaboration in this process. So there's been agreement between the agencies regarding the collection of data on key worker numbers and primary consultation. And with a key worker model in the context of small teams, it often means, as has been already mentioned, that primary consultations are often requested from other agencies. So making sure that we had data that was accurate was really challenging, and ensuring that children weren't being counted twice. So there was a major agreement that only clients for whom the provider is a key worker is counted for funding and service agreement purposes. So only those key worker numbers, and that primary consultation data is collected within the region. So that workload is reflected, but it's reflected in that regional data. And there was an agreement to collate and review all the data that was being collected on a quarterly basis. So the quarterly review of data by the partnership group informs the professional development and training needs of the practitioners. So the partnership group has a commitment to provide at least 2 regional practitioner professional development days a year, and part of the agenda of those days is informed by the data. The data has also informed recruitment decisions and assisted in managing capacity and demand issues across the region. It's also enabled agencies to review and self-monitor on an ongoing basis. So just quickly, what do we collect? We collect a range of information about EFT by sub-region, agency and discipline. We collect information about referrers, so demographics, the referrers themselves and the outcomes of referrals, key worker caseloads, allocations and closures, and information about the request for primary consultation. Now, I'm just going to click through and show really briefly some of the sorts of data then that we have at hand. So information about who is it that's actually referring into our system, what primary consultation, which disciplines are of what demand, what the actual issue types are for those consultations, information about the waiting time. So again, we're able to check and monitor most primary consultations are being provided even across agency within 2 to 6 weeks. And family satisfaction, again, we've sort of just put this one in because we know that the family satisfaction survey is not particularly robust, and Sarah will talk a little bit more about some of the things that we're looking at in terms of outcome measures. But one of the concerns about the key worker model is often that families don't really like it. But in fact, the model in our region was introduced between that 2010 survey and that 2011 survey. And the results actually indicate that families were extremely satisfied with the new model.
I think we've probably covered most of these, but just to give you a sense of what we feel the major innovations and more importantly, or as importantly, what have been outcomes for families. We talked about the implementation of the model, the redevelopment of central intake and early support. We developed practice guidelines to be used across the region. So all agencies are using the same document to support their practice and inform practitioners about what they need to be doing in their role. The responsiveness to primary consultation requests across agencies, I think, is really important. So the fact that we can go to another agency and elicit appropriate support from another discipline, and that happens in a timely manner. The internal data collection and the willingness of different agencies to undertake that on top of all the other reporting that we all need to do anyway within our own organisations. We're also doing this additional data collection. The increasing clarity of definitions of goals and strategies documented through the FSSP. So we've done a lot of work across the region in getting everybody to really think about that as being the cornerstone for good service delivery, that ability to identify what our goals are and how to document that. We're currently in a process of everybody undertaking to use this COPM and GAS to support the planning process and to measure outcomes, and also using family outcome surveys to do that. So again, that sense of everybody doing the same thing. So at the end of it, we have this rich body of information that's coming across from all the agencies, which gives us a lot of information about what the outcomes are of our service. For families, a clarity of what the role of practitioners actually is and where services sit in terms of service delivery. Anything that provides clarity for families must be a good thing. Improved communication and connectedness with other services. A sustainable workload as a key worker and also as somebody providing primary consultation. So part of this was saying that in order for this to be sustainable, we have to say to people, you will have this number of families for whom you provide a key worker role per day of work, and that then gives you time to be able to do that provision of primary consultation as needed. People have certainly reported that their workload has not increased in the way that people were fearful of, but has actually become manageable. And their sense of where their role and responsibility lies with each family is more clearly defined, and it's actually easier to get down to the nitty-gritty of what needs to be done, because as the key worker, you're the person who's going to be doing it. We've talked about the fast response rate to primary consultation requests, and the fact that those requests for primary consultations have informed professional learning that we've undertaken in the region. So if there are a large number of requests coming in, for example, for speech pathology, which is usually the case, and in terms of wanting speech pathology input around early language development, we've then actually been able to provide some professional development that addresses that for everybody. So it informs what our upskilling needs to be, which is really important. Identification of goals and strategies for families and practitioners, and measuring the effectiveness of our intervention, measuring outcomes, which is really important. Okay, challenges, of course. We all know about, well, many of us know about regional and rural service provision and the challenges for spread populations and small population centres. Workforce challenges. Engagement with referrers and other universal services is an ongoing issue. I was really interested, Tim, in your comment saying if the key worker transdisciplinary stuff is really so difficult, let's address this other stuff first. Let's get that engagement in terms of environments happening and get that going really well. And I guess we've kind of done a bit of a topsy-turvy thing, but now we're recognising, we feel we've got the model reasonably well embedded, but now we know that the next thing we need, the next layer on top of that, is to really grapple with this issue of supporting children in universal services. That's the kind of the next challenge that we are working on, I guess. The challenges of supporting families with complex needs, supporting vulnerable families, supporting families who a perfect, case history that we've heard this morning around how we best support those families. That challenge is ongoing. And system organisational issues, when you've got agencies with their own internal kind of processes and systems, how much remains within the domain of the individual agency, how much becomes the domain of the overall governance structure, where does the responsibility for individual practitioner supervision lie, how much is an internal thing, how much is external, those sorts of things. How much additional paperwork are we asking people to do in terms of working in this kind of model across agencies, when we all, as I say, we have our own internal processes that we need to follow. So of course it's not easy, but it never was, and it's not like it was easy and now it's hard. It was always hard, so yeah, there are challenges. And what would the ideal model really look like? I don't know. I mean, it makes it, the way we tell the story makes it sound like we did this reform and decided what the perfect model was and implemented it, but in actual fact, we implemented this change within the context of an existing service. It's not like we've put in more people or more money or dramatically changed the organ. We're all still sitting in the same chair and driving around in the same places. We haven't had a major change to workforce and resourcing. And the question I think does need to be asked, if we were building something something completely new from the ground up, actually what would it look like? Because it wouldn't look like what we've got. I don't know I guess that's what you're going to tell us, Tim, in a few years. What will it look like? Because what we've done is plonk it on top of the existing structure and done it as best we can. Okay, thank you.